Hello and welcome to 4,000 and Counting. I'm Watty, and today I am joined by friend of the show, Dr. Victoria Silverwood. Vic, thanks for joining once again. I believe this is maybe four for you or five.
Yeah, something like four, definitely. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, so we're having you on because, well, the wheels have fallen off and we are seeing cheap shots and attempted cheap shots and slashes to the face, cross checks to the back of the head, attempted decapitations, and pretty much everything in between. We've seen it in the NIHL League, we've seen it in the SNL. There was one between the Steelers and the Blaze on David Clements last week. It's getting out of control. So the incident that kicked the whole kind of social media posts and viral stuff off was Jay Lucas from Whitney Warriors, and that was against the Solway Sharks. Now he takes a two-handed chop at the defenseman, kind of across the arm sort of area, and then he doubles down. He cocks back, and he then cross checks him to the base of the neck, top of the neck, base of the skull, sort of area. Following day, we release a second video, this time Tom Wakefield, Billingham Buccaneers against Coventry Blaze NIHL 2. We see a slash in motion, a big old stick directly to the face of the Coventry player. Now, we've had discipline. We're going to go all the way kind of through from beginning to end. We've had discipline, which we'll get to in a second. But we've always spoke about on this podcast, and you've been watching hockey long enough, and you've been listening to these kind of things, and obviously been involved in Ice Guardians and stuff like that. You take the enforcer away, you take the tough guy away, people start using their sticks. And I think people thought we were bullshitting when we said that. And guess what? Here we are with no tough guys, no enforcers. And guess what people are doing? They're using their sticks as weapons. So let's go to the first incident. Jay Lucas, what do you make of that in your professional opinion?
Well, obviously, straight away, this isn't just like one sort of swing to the arm, which you do see in a lot of games when players get frustrated and it often doesn't get called. This was the hit, and then immediately followed by the cross check to the back of the head and neck. Obviously, that area, not only is it your head, obviously, that's kind of something I focus on a lot is sort of head injuries, but also like your risk of breaking a neck, damaging a spine, ending up with paralysis or whatever conditions because of that. That's something that's well out of the remit of the game and certainly wouldn't be seen as being acceptable by anyone. So yeah, obviously that kind of drew attention to me because of my kind of experience with this, with work in the last sort of couple of decades of this, is that yes, we know that there's violence in the game. We know that's part of the game. We all like that part of the game. But what we don't accept is when it goes way beyond what anybody would consider to be acceptable. And that's something you'd really expect to see, and we have seen, but you'd expect to see it taken further in the form of like additional suspension.
So for those that haven't seen the incident, and I mean, you must have been living under a rock if you haven't seen it by this point. I mean, the video we shared alone has been seen by over 1 million people on our page, but it's absolutely mental. Now, I wish we were going viral, having 1 million views for something else, and it wasn't for a slash and a cross check to the back of the head. But one of the biggest comments, and that goes across both videos, is a lack of reaction from the teammates.
Mm.
Now, again, a lot of the comments are stating that due to this unwilling combatant rule that they currently have in place in the NIHL, NIHL National, and well, basically across the UK, other than the Elite League, I think the Elite League have the instigator rule, so slightly different.
Yeah.
But this unwilling combatant rule that has probably stopped anybody jumping in and maybe offering them out. I know I saw Jamie Thompson, he's coming on the podcast this week. He was coaching, he's behind the bench. He said, it's a tight game, it's a one goal game. They've got a great opportunity for one of the lower sides to beat Whitley. Now, I do get that aspect of it, but I don't care.
Mm.
I don't care. You can't allow somebody to two-hand one of your players like that and cross-check them in the back of the neck. Ice hockey has policed itself for long enough. It's only just recently that it's kind of gone away from that. And that has seen the rise of these cheap shots. Were you shocked that, like, and by the way, here, just a little like caveat and to borrow a little bandy disclaimer in here. For what it's worth, I understand the puck is in this corner here, and all the Solway players just happen to be facing the puck. The incident actually happens behind. But were you still shocked that nobody did anything? Like in my day, I even said to a couple of people, "I'm jumping the bench. I don't care. I'm coming off that bench. I'm taking the five. I'm taking the 10 game. I don't care if you do that to one of my players and I'm on the ice." And same with Jeremy Cornish or Melangestad or Jason Rushton or you name it, any of these guys, Jared Adams, whoever you want, Brad Voth. They are not watching that from the bench and nothing's happening, I'm afraid.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I was surprised, but obviously the video that I saw, I mean, I wasn't there at the game to see the rest of it. The video I saw didn't really show aftermath to know whether anything had happened, but obviously, I've heard since that there wasn't any involvement. I think, majority of the players playing now have grown up playing hockey in a time where there isn't that accountability so much, and it's more a case of listening to the referee. So if the referee's stepping in, they're doing their bit, they've done enough. That's definitely having an impact. Um, but I mean, Ice Guardians was filmed, what, 10 years ago now?
Yeah.
And in that, I was talking about how in the European leagues, players say it's much more dirty than it is in, well, at that point, the EIHL or the NHL, where there is some accountability, because they were kind of removing it. And then I was saying, if we remove fighting completely, that's what we'll end up with. And we have ended up with that. I don't necessarily think, just bringing fighting back. I think it's a whole cultural thing about respect that perhaps isn't passed on so much, or about team accountability that isn't passed on as much that's causing the problem. But this is something we knew would happen if you
Yeah.
take away that aspect of the game.
So I'm just going to play with this light here. I look like a ghost. I think my brightness is up too much. There we go. Um, yeah, accountability is massive. Respect is massive.
Mm.
It's something that you learn as a young guy stepping into senior hockey by having those kind of guys around you. For example, my first couple of years walking into locker rooms. I had Darren Hurley and Basingstoke, and then I go across the Slough. There's Chinny, there's Norm, there's Greener. There's like guys where you walk into that locker room as a 17, 18-year-old, you fucking listen. Like you listen to what you're told, you do as you're told. I still remember to this day. Probably about 3 or 4 games in, I've been a bit. I play the way I do, but I was 18, trying to make an impression. So after every whistle, I'm in the goalie's face, I'm in the D-man's face, I'm skating into melees and doing all these things. And Chinny pulls me aside and says, "Watty, next time you go in there, drop your gloves. I don't want to see any of this pushing and shoving shit." He said, "If you want to do something, you go in there and you do it properly." So the next game you do, and then all of a sudden you start to get a little bit more respect. But he pulled me to one side and he tells me these things. And that allowed me to grow as a player, allowed me to start understanding the role a little bit better and what was expected of me in that side of that role. And I don't know if that's happening anymore because you don't have those senior top end guys who are not only veterans and mad skillful, but also tough and knew
Mm.
how to play the tough side of the sport.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, time is changing anyway. Kids are different. Kids have been raised differently. Like, there are a whole load of reasons why it would impact on the game. But obviously, what we're seeing is something that needs to not be happening. The fact that it happened twice in a weekend um, is coincidental, but it's also a sign that there is more of a problem and people trying to take these things into their own hands. Which the whole point of the unwilling combatant rule or the instigator rule, whatever league you're kind of looking at, was to try and improve player safety. I don't think fighting was the way to do that. I don't think taking out fighting from the sport did improve player safety. But we've got these changes where these players are feeling like they have to take things into their own hands and they're choosing to use their stick rather than anything else, which is not going to be acceptable in any way.
No. The second incident, as we've kind of briefly touched on, Billingham against Coventry, and it seems to just be like a goal and then a kind of bump after after the whistle's gone, after the goals. Half the boys are over there celebrating, and then you see the swing back and the slash.
Mm.
Now, the lad that got slashed had a cage on. And some of the comments from some of the people that we shared it was saying basically that it shouldn't be in as long of a ban because he slashed him in the cage. Right. Okay. So it was just fortunate that he was one of the players that had a cage on, because had it been one of the other 90% of the players on that team that was in a half visor, we'd still be picking bits of his teeth, jaw, and eye socket up from the ceiling of the ice rink,
Mm,
like all over the ice. It would have went everywhere. He was lucky that he did have the cage on. Now, for me, he doesn't get less of a ban because the guy had a cage on. I think like it's a ban no matter which way you look at it. He's a lucky boy. I think the ban probably would have been longer had he not had a cage on, because the injuries caused could have been catastrophic. Now, we can't have these guys skating around using sticks as weapons. With the slash itself, the intent is fully there.
mm,
It's not like he's went and sometimes you see it, guy goes to chop someone in the wrist, that comes up, it maybe hits him a bit higher, tries to well, the infamous one, Marty McSorley always said, he used to he tried to chop him in the shoulder, it went up and caught Brash in the head. It's not going to be long before we see an outcome of, like Brashear down on the ice
mm,
in a world of hurt, and Marty McSorley getting charged, and it being all over the courts, all over the world news, all over the world media. If boys keep swinging their sticks at each other's heads, essentially we're going to end up with that. We're going to end up with a serious injury. Are you shocked
mm.
actually that out of both these incidents, for some reason, both of these lads walked away pretty much unscathed?
Um, I think the bans have been long enough that there isn't going to be an immediate retaliation for it. I don't know whether there'll be other elements. I think both teams talked about putting in extra training for players when they come back about what's acceptable and what isn't. I was pleased to see the England ice hockey made a clear statement that across UK we don't accept stick assaults as being part of the game in any way. And we all know accidents happen. Hockey players are tough. Every hockey player's got injuries. You see it every single game. But what isn't part of it is what happened in those two examples where you've got the stick making contact with the head. And I know some people were saying, oh, it's because he's got a cage on, it's okay. If you've got time to have a think, wait a minute, is this a player who wears a cage or looking to see if he's got a cage? Then you've got time to maybe not swing your stick at his head. Like
Yeah.
it's about, it probably wasn't part of the decision about whether he was going to be slashed in the face. It was a retaliation and the guy hadn't thought about it. And that's what we've got to crack down on. And I think what we've seen both organisations really crack down on it by giving those longer penalties is saying, line in the sand, this is not what we're going to have in the sport.
So for those that haven't seen the bans that have been handed out, Um, Tom Wakefield from the Billingham Buccaneers has been banned for 20 games. Now, I don't know how it works, because I know he plays up and down between the Hawks and the Buccaneers. So across, not the Hawks, sorry, the Stars and the Buccaneers. I know he plays up and down between both. So I don't know if it's 20 games at the level he was playing at. So i.e. NIHL 2, he has to wait all the way through, or because if he plays both, it might speed the process up a little bit, because he's getting some games served for the Stars, some games served for the Buccaneers. And then we've got Jay Lucas, and the Scottish Ice Hockey don't put their length of bans out. Now, out of respect, I'm not going to say what the actual full context of it is, but Whitley did announce that he will be playing no further part in any way in the 25-26 season. So we know he's banned until at least the end of the season. It hasn't been elaborated on in public anymore what that means. But do you think 20 games for Tom, and then the end of the season for Jay, as it stands, is fair length bans on the incidents?
I think it's a really difficult decision for Dots or whoever's sort of involved to decide, because you've got to allow players time to think about their actions and think about whether there's change. So 20 games could be absolutely what these guys need to think, right, this is a whole season or most of a season that I'm not able to play, I'm not able to develop. That's a big punishment. But you've got to think, is that the kind of test will be is when they come back, whether they've changed. And the other kind of test will be whether other people continue to do it, having seen those bans. Because I mean, what I said in that bit I wrote for your page, the reason why I'm kind of involved in it and concerned with it in terms of my own kind of interest is because I think had we not seen those big bans, those lengthy suspensions, then there would have been more potential for somebody to feel that justice hadn't been done and make a claim to the criminal, to the police, to pursue something civil, which they're entitled to do. Anyone's entitled to do, but it doesn't always go very far. But I think perhaps the fact that the leagues are showing, look, we can deal with this, we can give these lengthy suspensions, we can draw a line in the sand and make it clear that we don't accept that going forward, then that will hopefully prevent any other involvement from sort of criminal investigation point of view.
Well, you got ahead of me because I was gonna
I'm
come to
sorry.
that. No, that's good. It's good. It's gonna come to that because although we share the third video now, I want to talk to you about that before we get into the civil stuff. Now, it's worth noting, although we shared it later on, it did actually happen on a previous weekend. It wasn't a current. It wasn't this week just gone. It was the week before. So they all kind of happened around about the same time. But we saw a very, very near miss in the Slough Spitfires versus MK Thunder game. Isaac Murray takes a bump. He takes a swing, big old baseball swing. Luckily, he didn't make connection. Otherwise, we would have been looking at probably another 20 gamer. Why do you think it is? I know you touched on like, kids are brought up differently and stuff like that. Why do you think it is now all of a sudden where we're seeing guys swinging sticks like weapons? Because someone fucking pissed me off in the comments. They were like, "Yeah, yeah, I remember this from back in the EPL days." My response to it was, no, I said I played like 600 games in EPL. I remember two incidents like that, and they were both Kurt Irvine. I mean, I love Kurt, but they were both him. Like it wasn't like an everyday occurrence because there was guys that would hold you accountable, and I just so it's just mad to my brain that this is what kids are doing now.
I mean, I think stick swinging has always been there, but it's always been there as a kind of frustration. So you're always going to have players swinging their stick at the plexi or on the goal
Goalpost.
or post just because they're like frustrated. Like I get feeling to retaliate, but I think they do have this sense. People do have a sense that when you are protected and when you're kind of just doing something in the spur of the moment, you're not aware of the consequences of what will happen. So obviously, in this case, that the swing didn't connect, and we see it all the time when they don't. But often it's just somebody gets in the way. When it's actually directed at a player, there is more of an element of intent at that.
Well, I'll tell you something for nothing. If Brian McGrattan's on the ice, no matter how pissed off any of the three of these boys were, not
Mm,
one of them swinging their fucking stick anywhere near anybody else. And that's just
yeah.
fact. It's just a fact. I don't care how angry you are. I don't care how little you think about it. If
Mm,
Brian McGrattan's on the ice, you're fucking thinking about that. Let me tell you, that's in the back of your brain. You're not doing anything stupid against that team. Even if you're a guy that throws 20 hits a game, when you're playing against Brian McGrattan's team, I bet that goes down to 4 or 5.
yeah.
Like it is what it is. Like it makes you think, and there's just no chance that you're going out there and purposely trying to deliver a cheap shot like that, knowing that the potential outcome is that you're going to meet Big Earn and he's going to fucking ragdoll you and embarrass you in front of 2,000 people or whatever it may be. The interesting one for me out of this is kind of just gone by the wayside and not really been out there. But Harding from Sheffield slash Davy Clements in
Mm,
like across the cheek sort of face area between in Coventry in the game between them and the Steelers. I think he might have got 1 or 2 games from the Elite League. Now, this one wasn't as bad and it wasn't as much of a back scratcher. Them
mm,
two have been at each other for kind of like 30 seconds, battling, cross checking, clearing out the net, trying to get to the net, like hockey plays. And then he does that. But it was just the reason I brought that one up is because when we shared it and we shared your post, people talked about, well, it only seems to be happening in the lower leagues. Well, no, it's literally
yeah.
happened in the Elite League fucking 2 weeks ago.
Mm. I think one of the differences why it's happening more frequently in the lower leagues is because I think there are younger players. There are players who haven't grown up with that accountability, haven't got used to how to control their things. I think also hockey hasn't created anything else to be an effective deterrent yet once they
Yeah,
got rid of fighting. So these bans may be that. Maybe we'll see a change. But what I think they also need to, if you're going to take something out that is doing a job, which is, fighting was doing a job in the sport, what you've done in the elite league is you've put 4 officials in rather than 3. So you've got
yeah,
more people on the ice, you're seeing it more. Obviously, you don't have that in every league, you don't have that in every game. But what I think they haven't put in, and this is important when you're playing like an IHL2, there's a lot of really, really young players, is that there hasn't been enough education to the players about acceptability. And I think that's something that, the leagues really should be looking at as part of their, registration, to put something in to kind of explain to them what is important out there, getting some previous players in, explaining it all to them.
yeah. I think that would go a long way. And I know a lot of guys who would jump at the opportunity to go and educate the
Mm,
next wave of talent coming through. We don't want to see it go down the criminal route, and I know you just
mm,
touched on it there, and I was going to lead me into a couple of questions. Thank God, no one did get a broken neck, no one did get a broken jaw, blah blah blah.
mm,
I'm not one for people going to the police for things that happen on the ice. However, I think had that first cross check in the back of the head, back of the neck area, if that had broken some vertebrae, if that had gone one step further and maybe caused some sort of paralysis, full paralysis, partial paralysis, there would have been no choice.
mm,
There would have been no choice whether it would have had to have gone to some sort of criminal suit. It would have definitely went to a civil suit because the care for somebody who has paralysis, like the amount of care and
I know.
physio, occupational health, everything that goes, you're running into the millions and millions and millions for
Mm,
between now and the end of their life. The loss of work, the loss of earnings. It could have went catastrophic. It could have went really, really bad. Luckily for everybody involved that it didn't, but it still could have went that way.
mm,
Now, same thing. If he didn't have a visor on and all of a sudden he's got 15 grand's worth of dental work and can't go to work for 7, 8 months because he's got a fractured eye socket and a broken cheekbone and everything else, guys were going to want to recoup some of that money, and ultimately it would end up going down that civil route. Do you know, interestingly, talking about your paper that you kind of wrote for us there, I completely forgot about Macaulay Stones and the fact
mm.
that that had went down the criminal route. So it does have a little bit of precedent, but not a whole heap.
No.
What can we do to stop it going that way? Because we want incidents that happen on the ice to be taken care of by the governing bodies or by the players on the ice. But I think it's going to get to a stage where one of these stick swings, one of these cross checks, one of these big, cheap shot moments are going to cause a big time injury, and then we're going to be fucked.
Yeah. Yeah, because it will impact the sport of the UK, it'll impact the sport elsewhere, it'll impact other sports as well. So once we do get that case, and that's what, we've talked about previously with the Matt Petgrave Adam Johnson incident, if the courts get involved, this impacts things further. And I think people can assume my argument is, oh, this is criminal. The fact that I call myself a criminologist is irrelevant. Doesn't mean I'm wanting things to be criminal,
No,
um, or that I believe they are. I'm not labeling things as criminal, but the way the law stands, completely unrelated to everything else, anybody has the potential to try and raise complaints about anything else. And the point at which it becomes criminal when there's a case that it does. And obviously, we saw with Macaulay Stones that it did become criminal. And that was he hadn't even used a weapon in that case. He'd been punching the guy when he was down. And the courts did get involved and did punish him. So there is some precedent there, and it will be a case that at some point the courts will get involved. What they normally do is investigate it, take it for a while, and then decide there isn't enough evidence or public interest to take it further, and saying that the league should be policing themselves. And what we've seen with the bans this week is the leagues are policing themselves by handing out these really extensive bans and by making it really clear that it's not acceptable. I think they do need to go one step further for future things, and I think they need to implement compulsory training. But I think a lot of
I think both the EIH and the SIH in this circumstance have put
mm,
in that there is going to be compulsive like back to play sort of training.
yeah, and I think it needs to be there for all the players as well, so it's there as part before they're going on the ice as part of their development. Um, because that will make it clear. And I think, I've always sort of been talking about this for 18 years now, and I kind of have always been saying at some point it will get to that point where it's gone too far, and then nothing will be the same. Um, I think we're probably getting closer to that point than we were 18 years ago. I never want it to
Yeah.
get to that point. I want people to be able to play the sport and play a physical game and be able to enjoy contact sports while they're legal and acceptable, because we don't want to completely rule the game. But what is more important than any of that is player safety.
Well,
So
if I
that's got to be the
sorry,
primary thing.
if you'd have told me in 2014 when I was about to play my last game that in 12 years everyone would be skating around in net guards and face cages, I would have told you you were fucking mental.
Mm,
Now, outside the EIHL, everybody else across the entirety of the UK is now on a net guard.
mm.
Brings me on to the second part of that thing, because
So the IHL
granted,
as well now.
EIHL will rule in on the net guards
Yeah,
as well.
yeah, they have to wear
They
net guards now.
Okay, perfect. So everybody across the entire UK, we saw Bandy over in France. Bandy's got the built-in one. So there's one change. And it's a change I totally agree with. Obviously, after what happened to Adam, it's a no-brainer. This should definitely be implemented. The one that I don't want to see happen, but I fear we might see happen, is mandatory face cages. That ends up being like collegiate hockey in in America and Canada, where we've got senior guys wearing cages or visors. Now, last night alone, we already shared Harry Hatfield. He took a big skate to the face, pure accident. Vanny goes down on a breakaway. Harry tries to like kind of dive to knock the puck. Vanny's skate comes back, catches him in the face. Unfortunate. We wish Harry a speedy recovery. Then also Mark Pitts gets hit with an accidental high stick. He's now had surgery on both his eyelids. And you were saying there was one in the Cardiff game, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Connor Capone. Yeah, got a big cut under the visor. Ended up going up to the hospital last night.
Now,
Again, not
obviously,
not accidental, and these things happen. Like you're always going to
yeah,
have accidental things happen, but there is a difference between accidental things and intentional things
yeah.
that it's got to
But
be kind of directed on.
my thinking behind the whole thing, it was actually my brother. My brother texted me saying, "Fuck me, face cages are coming soon," and then that was when he saw the Harry thing, and we kind of briefly talked about it after the cheap shots from last weekend. Then the Harry thing. And then the Pitts news came out, and then he texted me. He's like, "Yeah, they're definitely coming." So I don't think the players would even be shocked to see
No.
that. But what we don't want them to have to wear cages. We can't help anything that happens accidentally. You're going to get hit in the face with a puck. You're going to get hit with a high stick every now and again. You're going to catch an elbow every now and again. You're going to get a shoulder to your chops every now and again. What we can eradicate is the intentional ones, the
Yeah.
intentional hits to the head. We've seen the leagues across the world clamp down on hits to the head, and it seems to be working. Rugby, same thing. They've stopped contact at an early age in rugby. That's helping reduce the concussions there. What we can do to help eradicate any of the non-accidental ones is really clamp down on these cross checks, these high sticks, these
Mm,
intentional. And I'm not saying, someone takes a slap shot and follows through and it hits a D-man in the face. Shit happens. That's a pure accident. We
yeah.
know that happens. We're talking, intentional spears, intentional slashes, anything from the neck up that should be penalized heavily. Now, I know some of you are probably looking at me going, "Hey, Rich, coming from you, I never two-handed anybody in the face ever. Did I get my stick and gloves up and to protect myself in hits? Yeah, of course. That was the game. But in terms of like, excuse me, an incident I haven't even shared yet. It's in the back. It's in the back burner. We had Oxford Rising Stars taking on Bristol 2 last weekend, and there's a battle between Mackenzie Parsons and Adam West. And Wesley just cross-checks past straight in the face. Now, Parsons drops his gloves. hits him with two or three kind of like body shots. He ends up getting a 3 game ban for fighting an unwilling combatant. Now, we spoke about this on the podcast last week where the goalie headbutted Brandon Miles and Brandon Miles put a bit of a beat down on him, and then Brando gets 3 games for fighting an unwilling combatant. I'm sorry, if you fucking headbutt somebody or if you cross check somebody in the face, you're no longer an unwilling combatant. You are very much a combatant in this situation. And in fact, if you do that to start it, i.e., he threw the headbutt at Brando first. Westy threw the cross check at Pass first. You're most certainly a willing combatant. So I would like to see the league stamp out these bullshit 3 game bans for players looking after himself because like I think so in that situation, Cole the goalie got 2 games, Brandon got three, and then in the other one, Parsons gets 3 games and West gets nothing. I think we're punishing the wrong thing here. Like a headbutt and a cross check to the face should be more of a punishment than the boys then dropping the gloves and going after him.
Yeah. I mean, I've never been a fan of the instigator rule. It's always been my issue, and that's the one thing guaranteed to get me screaming and shouting at games, as anyone who sits near me will tell you. Because I don't think I totally understand why you need it and why we needed to change what we had back in 2009, which was like stage fights and kind of all those
Yeah,
kind of behaviors. I get that, but I think the instigator rule is often completely wrongly called because they doesn't acknowledge the way it's written in the rule book, not the way the referees identify it. They're doing what they have to do, but I think the way it's in the rule book is acknowledges this, so it doesn't acknowledge the fact that quite often the instigation is something that's happened previously. The
yeah.
instigation is what was happening before the ref didn't see, or something that previously wasn't called. So I think my issue has always been with that, and I guess it would be the same with aggressor penalty down at national level and below. I think they need to take account for things, and that's really difficult to do because I'm sure a lot of referees do it anyway in terms of how they call things. But it's very difficult to do when the book spells it out really clearly how it should be. But yeah, I hate the idea that there's a rule that prevents justice being sort of handed out.
I'm hoping this new under 19 National League that they've introduced in England this year goes a long way to do that because actually looking, I got sent, Martin Peters sent me over the results of the games in this National League so far. And unlike when they did the under 20 league a few years ago, and it was just like 2 teams fucking pasting everyone 9-0 every week, the games are 1 goal games, 2 goal games, 3 goal games with an empty netter. Like the games are tight, they're competitive. A lot of the good guys are sticking around at under 19s to be involved in this. So you're seeing like some fast, physical hockey. I think there's been to date 5 major penalties handed out. Maybe a couple of boys have dropped the gloves here and there. But it's making that under 19 leagues kind of making it that next step towards senior hockey. And hopefully by the games being competitive and the juices being flowing, these guys are going to learn to compete. They're going to learn what it takes to battle. They're going to learn what it takes to, take a number. Yes, I'm a cheap shot at you. Yeah, well, it's 2-1. Just suck it up, take a number. You'll play again, and you'll get them in the third period with a clean hit. Like these sort of things that are going to what happens in senior hockey. Hopefully, the guys that are playing at that level will start to get a bit of this understanding of, yeah, tough shit, I got hit, but we won 4-2, or, like, whereas as opposed to, oh my God, he bumped me, let's try and swing his head off his shoulders with my stick. Hopefully that stops happening because, and this is not me being a dick, it's no coincidence that any of the players that have done this are playing at the levels they are.
Mm.
Like, we're not seeing Aaron Nell taking a swing and try and take anybody's head off with a stick. We're not seeing Jonathan Phillips taking a swing and trying to take anybody's head off. It's happening at lower levels of the game. I know in Elite League, besides the ones this year. What what do we think it is that do you think it is purely just a maturity thing? Or do you think it's a kind of combination of a lot of these kids have grown up playing like if you grew up in the South and you're playing for, I don't know, Swindon or Slough, you're
Mm.
winning every game. If you're
Yeah.
up north, if you're playing for Sheffield, you're used to winning every game. Now all of a sudden you're in this under 19 league where you could turn up anywhere and lose every week, and win, lose, and it's competitive, much the same as the Elite League is. We've seen Fife beat Belfast. There's Bristol turned MK over in the National last night. Like, if we get good competitive hockey, it's going to make these guys better players. It's going to make them more respectful. It's going to
Mm.
make them have a better understanding of what it is to take that next step and be at that level.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, I really kind of respect what sort of we're trying to do, what people at all levels are trying to do in the UK in terms of bringing players on, developing younger players. I guess the only sort of thing I would also say they should think about, and I don't know whether they have or not, but is just that education to players about what is acceptable, so they're not taking things into their own hands, and just retaliating out of anger. I mean, if you're a young guy playing a contact sport, you're going to get angry. That's going to be happen, but it's about learning how to
Yeah.
deal with that and how having to channel it, which is what professional players have had to do. They've all gone through that stage, and they've all had to learn how to channel it effectively within the game. So I think they're probably, if they're looking at developing more, they should definitely be thinking about putting in some good like educational program for the players on that kind of aspects. Because some coaches will be doing that already. Some coaches will be doing great stuff with the guys they're with. And it's not just in that. You and I have previously talking a lot about mental health support for players. We know that some teams are really, really great at that, giving players that support, and others aren't. So I think, when you've got a governing body like, England Ice Hockey, like Hockey Scotland, you're going to perhaps think about putting that in place as part of their registration fee so that there is compulsory training in things that will support them as well as things that will protect other players from them.
And if you've had that education, you then can't turn around and say, "Well, I didn't." There's no like, I didn't know. If
No.
if all 12,000 members have the exact same training before they sign on the dotted line to be registered, then
Yeah.
everybody is on the same page. I think it kind of gives you a bit of respect for your fellow competitor. That's not to say don't go out and run somebody. That's not to go out and say don't finish your hits. That's just to say like we all agree out here that we're not out here to take each other's fucking teeth out with sticks or break each other's
Yeah.
necks with cross checks. Now we all understand the mutual combat rule within the sport is something that I was actually gonna. So people keep bringing up the code, and it's generally being brought up by people who don't know what the fucking code is.
Yeah.
But I've been speaking to a couple of players now. Interestingly enough, I was saying to you off air last night. I was in Slough, and Luke Martin is another one of the boys that have had a lengthy ban recently. He had 11 games for his part in the Huskies versus Phantoms 2 brawl from about 3 weekends ago. And he says to me, Watty, if I'd have done what I done last weekend after one of these slashes, everyone would be saying I was a hero. And do you know what? He is right. Like his was a bad one. He ends up sitting for 11. In fact, what I liked about Luke, he wore it. He went, hands up, I fucked up. Apologized to the other team, apologized to the player. Um, but also at the same time, I think he's right because the question was asked, and I've already asked it to you. There was no retribution, there was no nothing.
Mm.
You almost want a guy like Luke on your side there for when something like this does happen. He was like, "Yeah, I would have answered the bell straight away. There's no way that happens on my watch." And anybody that I know that plays, obviously, I'm in a 4,000 captains group chat. So there's myself, Bandy, my brother, Sully, Morsey. We're all discussing these things, and everybody, that the natural reaction from all those veteran kind of guys is that, "Fuck, nobody did anything. We still
Mm.
can't get over that." The tough one for me in that scenario, especially playing the way I play, I would struggle to walk back into that changing room with those guys after that
Mm.
because I know
Yeah.
they don't have my back. And sometimes being a good teammate means you've got to get an ass kicking for a teammate. I mean, it's happened to the best of us, the toughest of us, all of us. But no
Yeah.
one's keeping count of wins and losses if you jump in for a teammate in that scenario. Like no
Yeah.
one cares if you jump in and don't even land a single punch. No one gives a shit. Like everybody on the bench is like G'd up. You watched last night, so Slough versus Streatham. Lewis English, veteran in that league now for Slough, and Roman Cathcart for for Streatham, 19 roams, so just a young guy. Them two are battling, getting a bit heated. Looks like maybe, and Lewis can fight. Looks like Lewis is about to drop the gloves with young Cathcart, and Harvey Stead, being the veteran, steps in. Stead and Lewis English, they get after it. But if you watch the reaction of the Streatham bench when Harvey comes back after getting out the penalty box, every single guy's up, banging on the boards, going giving him a tap on the arse, fucking rights, that's it. Because he stepped in and looked after one of the young guys. And that
Mm.
stuff as a teammate, God, Harvey Stead's not a fighter. But he knows in that scenario, he's better fighting the guy that can fight than a 19-year-old in his team. And that goes such a long way to being a good teammate. And yeah, like I said, I reiterate how pumped that Stratton bench was when he came out the box and came back. Like everybody's up, everybody's bouncing,
Mm.
and you know that every guy on that team's got your back. I think that's such a crucial thing when it comes to like winning championships, winning trophies, knowing that that guy next to you has your back no matter what.
Yeah. And like what I saw, like through my research in this country, but also through Ice Guardians and other stuff I've done over the years, the way that those players were respected was unlike I've seen any other player be respected before. Like those, the way Brian McGrathen's teammates respected what he did was really, really clear. Obviously in the UK as well as in North America. But I think what's different is that part has gone from a team, that kind of level of respect. So it's got to be replaced. If you're not going to bring fighting back, which is hard to go backwards with things, like I wouldn't want them not to wear helmets either.
No, of
So we've
course,
got
yeah,
used to
yeah.
those. So if fighting isn't going to be coming back, and if there isn't going to be that kind of respect, then it has to be put somewhere else in terms of training them.
Funny you mentioned that actually, because when you hear all those old dudes get interviewed, they didn't wear buckets. They all said there was no like sticks to the head. Everyone knew to keep your kind of sticks just they stayed down because guess what? You don't have a helmet on either. So if you
Yeah.
stick somebody in the head, next shift you're getting stuck in the head. It was very much like that, eye for an eye then. But they all say it didn't really go on. We kind of respected each other. We knew we didn't have helmets on. So
Mm.
everybody was trying to play within the boundaries, and we saw like a damn sight less head injuries back then, even though there was probably treble the amount of fights. But in terms of, stick and shoulder to the head contact
Mm.
was a lot less. I
Yeah.
kind of want to move on to something you touched on, like Adam and Matt, very very briefly. Last time
Mm-hmm.
I interviewed you, I believe, was a Continental Cup, so the information
Oh yeah.
hadn't been released. We've saw in this summer here that Matt no longer has to deal with the Crown Prosecution Service in the UK,
Yeah.
that there's going to be no legal charges to face, and
Mm-hmm.
that he has been allowed to go home. He's since signed with the Indy Fuel. He's since scored a goal. He's getting back to his hockey. Kind of give us your professional opinion on how that all kind of played out. Because I know we'd spoke in length prior to it happening. Now,
Mm.
obviously, the result and the case has been closed. Can you kind of give us like a legal perspective on that one?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely the same as in any other case of anybody that is responsible for their behaviour. So, for example, obviously, I lecture in a university. If I get arrested, then and I'm on charge, then they probably wouldn't want me teaching. They probably wouldn't want me around the university for a while. They'd sort of hang back on that. I think it obviously took longer because of the confusion with it being sport, and the courts really don't know exactly how to do it, which must have had, and I'm sure has had a massive impact on that. Obviously, with a case that serious, it has to be investigated properly. But 100%, he should be allowed to go back to doing what he was doing before when there's no criminal case to answer for. So it's great that he's been able to go back on and obviously kind of continue his career and do that. I think it's regrettable it took that long, but I think the confusion of the kind of sports protection from law is what caused the length of that injury, not the injury, that sorry, that process that took 17 months to decide that they weren't going to charge him.
We put a
Um,
post out. Oh, sorry, I was just going to say we put a post out, and Adam's sister-in-law actually responded to quite a few comments. Adam's wife did as well. Obviously, our thoughts are still with them. It's been
mm,
like 2 years, 2 days since the incident. Brutal for the family, but they were whilst understanding what Matt went through. They said in the comments they weren't happy that he was back playing. Can you kind of touch on that? Because obviously, like you said, no legal case is to be faced. What is he just expected to never play the game again? You can understand the frustration from the Johnson family, but actually, I think he's well within his rights to continue his career.
yeah, and I'm not at all surprised that it bothers the Adams family. I totally understand that, and it is important what they feel as a family. It is important, that anyone who knew the victim to be able to see justice being done, but justice has been done with a thorough investigation and decided that there isn't enough evidence to pursue anything through court. Um, it's the same with anyone who may serve a prison sentence or something. If you hit someone with a car and give them an injury, you might be suspended from driving for a while, but then you'll be driving again. You just have to allow people to move back onto the world. It's not, we're not just deciding that as soon as somebody does something, we're then saying they can't ever live a normal life again. It's part of justice moving on. Obviously, they're frustrated by that. And like their voice is really important in that, like, as victims' family. But in terms of criminal law, there's no further action. I mean, there are plenty of other avenues that we may see be used in terms of civil law, where the kind of level of evidence is needed is less. So it may be something they continue to pursue, or they may decide to move on, just the same as in any other case.
Both his wife and his sister-in-law, they both, in the comment section, both spoke very well. And if I'm not going to go
Mm,
back and find it for you guys, but if you're interested to hear the Johnsons' perspective and read what they had to say, if you go back on our posts to when we announced that Matt was going to be back playing for Indy Fuel, you'll be able to find the comments on there. In fact, Corey Bolio, that used to play in the Super League back in the day, played for Nottingham, played for Sheffield, amongst other teams. He actually got into like a bit of a conversation with Adam's sister-in-law, and even though they had like differences of opinions, it was
mm,
quite interesting to see um the two different sides of it. Now, obviously, like I said, 2 years and 2 days since Adam's death, absolutely tragic. We never want to see anything like that happen again. But last night goes to show with Harry's face. Ice hockey is a dangerous sport.
mm.
You're a half a second or an inch away a lot of the time from serious catastrophic injuries. So we just want the players to be in that safer space as we can be. Player welfare is crucial, and
Yeah,
we're not calling for everybody to fucking be chucked in hazmat suits and have to skate around with none of their body showing or none of their face showing. But what we're asking for is just a little bit of respect from the players towards each other,
yeah,
bit of respect towards the fucking game. Respect the game. Like I think those incidents, all three of those incidents, show a massive disrespect for the game and everybody involved.
yeah, yeah. And it's always difficult. And what you were saying before about net guards and how people obviously all wear them now. When it happened, I said they'll bring them in, but they'll probably start. The first week it happened, I'm like, they'll bring them in, but it will happen, and it will be anyone under 20 now. Then each year it'll go on to the point that everyone's wearing them, like it is with helmets, and then now with visors. You'd never look back now and say, "Oh, what killjoy decided to put helmets on the players?" In my
Right,
day, I could see
exactly.
it without the helmet, and it was great, wasn't it? And it was brilliant, and we respected each other, and there were no problem. But obviously,
No
helmets
chance.
came in, so no one would do it without one now. And I think what will happen, and I think with cages, it's more likely to come in gradually, like I thought net guards would be, and thankfully weren't. Is that you will see more and more examples of that coming in, and I think you'll see it on an age related thing. If you've got to wear them and you're under 18, it'll soon be the point that it's under 20, under 25, and it will go up the leagues in that point. Um, I think for players who it isn't their job and they still got to go and do a day job,
They
obviously if
still
they
do
end
it
up
now.
with with an accident, with me and my husband was the same with rec hockey. He took a got put in the boards and he had a visor on, but it went under his visor. He nearly lost his eye.
Shit.
Had a massive kind of scar, massive black eye and everything. Just part of training, wasn't even anything.
What even a
It
game?
happens.
No. Yeah.
Yeah, obviously, I'm a killjoy wife, so I made him wear a cage after that. But he
Ooh.
then has to go into a board meeting at work the next day with a massive black eye, looking like a right idiot.
Cool story
So
though.
yeah, yeah. Um, he thinks it's cool. Um, I thought
So do all the
differently when I,
guys around the water cooler.
yeah. Although I was the one having to go in the middle of the night to the hospital, but aside from
That's the
that,
bits you don't see.
yeah, absolutely. Is that I think you will see these changes, and I think cages will come in, and it's not a case of killjoy. It's about player safety. Same with helmets. This isn't nobody's saying, "Oh, let's make them look worse going across the ice," or "Let's find somewhere else put a sponsor logo." It was like,
Yeah.
no, we're kind of aware that the brain's important. Let's protect it with a helmet.
Let's go to something I have no idea about, but in my brain, it makes sense. Is it a case of as well, these cages get brought in because eventually it's going to get to the stage of who's going to fucking insurers?
Mm,
The insurers are going to be like, oh, guess what? We saw those 5 videos from this year where guys are trying to decapitate each other. We don't really fancy insuring you anymore. And it's going to be X times X extra on your premium if you do one of those two. And we're going to get priced out of the being able to afford player insurance. And we know the player insurance is shite anyway, but at least there's
yeah.
something. At least there's something there. We might
Mm,
get to the stage where we struggle to even get anything in place because of cheap shots and incidents like this, and that is something I might be wrong, but smart money says that insurers will turn around and be like, nah, you're all right.
yeah. I mean, nothing happens in player safety without the threat of it costing someone something at some point. That was a very rough way of saying it, but
I don't
like,
know where you go.
they bought, they bought net guards in because there was concerns if they didn't. Obviously, the coroner suggested it very soon after Adam's death. Um, and then there's that concern. Okay, if you don't bring it in against coroner's advice, then it's going to be you could be liable in the future. It could be a problem. We'll bring it in for safety. Insurers, if things are going to cost them money, insurers are going to bring in those things, and they're going to say, look, right now, bring it in. I will insure you if you all wear cages. If you don't wear cages, none of us will, and then you won't get anywhere.
I mean, I hope it's not the case. I hope guys do have the option to be able to wear a cage or not wear a cage. I think if you look even that Streatham Slough game last night, Seb Moore, I know he's 18 already. He's got a cage on. Adam Hilliker from Slough, Ziggy Beasley, Vanny Antonoff from Streatham, amongst other guys on those.
Mm,
There's guys that do have those jobs that you talk about, especially more so at that NIHL one level where you're talking third tier hockey. Nobody needs to be losing jibs or getting us
mm,
cut like Harry's missus assures me he'll be wearing a fucking cage when he goes
mm.
back. But she also said that last year after he took a slap shot to the face and had to get plates put in his face. Um,
Maybe he'll
so
listen this time.
yeah,
It makes a lot of
you
sense.
know, hockey players, just want to remember, folks, while I'm talking about Michaela and Harry. Obviously, if you'd have saw the post we just put out, they set up Tyler's farm parties in memory of their young son Tyler, who died suddenly last season. That was one of the charities. SUDC was one of the charities we raised money for at this year's charity game. Now, Tyler's farm parties are also going to be donating a portion of the money they raise back to SUDC. Please go drop them a follow. We asked you, and this is what I love about all of you guys. We asked you earlier on when we shared that post of his cut, if you would be so kind to go on and follow their page. And this is me asking you to do it again, but like on the podcast. So please go follow Tyler's Farm Parties. I love you guys. This already. So when we put that out there today, They had 460 followers. I just want to see what it was at now because yeah, great job, guys. 654 followers. You've put 200 followers on there in the last 2 hours. So props to you. Let's get that page over 1,000. They're trying to do really good things. Um, Talk about a couple that need a little bit of luck here. Obviously, they had the most brutal news ever, losing young Tyler. If you chuck in a puck to the face and plates in your face, and then a stick to the face, a skate to the face, sorry, and 25 stitches in 4 hours up at the plastic surgery specialist. Just maybe just pump their tires up a little bit, get on that page, interact, help them grow that. They're trying to do good things for good people, and we appreciate the shit out of you if you go and do that, please.
Yeah. And that's what hockey's about. We spend our time arguing about whether we think the court should get involved and where everything else should get involved. But the kind of universal support of Adam, and then now, people wanting to do good things, people wanting to do all the charity games that happen in hockey. Hockey is about doing nice things for people. It's not about smacking them over the head with a stick. So,
Yeah.
That's the thing to remember when we're all arguing about what's acceptable and not, is actually, at the end of the day, hockey does a lot of good stuff.
It does a lot of good stuff, and there's more good stuff in the pipeline. Can't wait to share it with you folks at well, I was gonna say a later date, hopefully a very soon date. But you might be hearing from myself and Vic once again, maybe in a little bit of a different format with something a little bit more cheerier to talk about next time. But Vic, anything else from you before I let you go enjoy the rest of your Sunday afternoon?
No, that's good. No, we were laughing earlier, weren't we, about the about comments on online sources, weren't we?
Yes.
And people that comment things, and I think it's really easy to, well, like, it's if you compare the difference of someone driving and the way they speak to people near them and someone walking.
Yeah.
Obviously, you feel free when you're in internet comments. You can feel like confident because you're behind an internet comment and arguing. But we were laughing at how it's really easy to misunderstand someone, and a lot of people have been like, "Oh, all right, you're just the killjoy wanting to stop fun in hockey." As someone I've had all the time, and like anybody who's seen me at a hockey game
No,
knows
that's
how
not
much
true.
I love that. Like knows how, what language is said, what goes on watching hockey, how much I enjoy watching that aspect of the game. So we were just, you and I earlier were just laughing about how it's quite easy to pick up and just think, oh, she's got nothing to say because she's actually, all she wants to do is tell us to do stuff. And it's like, well, like I haven't dedicated the last, couple of decades of my career to doing this because I want to stop people having fun. I've kind of dedicated my career to it because having spent that time with hockey players and understanding what they go through and what their lives are like, I want to do more to help them and support them. And part of that is raising awareness.
Yeah, absolutely nailed on. I think anybody that listens to this is going to know that you're not about that, and obviously we aren't looking to killjoy the sport at all.
Uh,
We're just looking for the boys to treat each other with a little bit more respect. And if you've got problem, lads, we've got a built-in mechanism within our sport for taking care of problems. Drop your shit, go to center ice, square up, throw the knucks a few times, give each other a fucking pat on the head, skate to the box, serve your 5 minutes, go upstairs, drink a pint, go back to your houses, and it's all said and done. Like, there's something to be said about the way we had it in the EPL, and that is how we had it in the EPL. And guess what? If you got to fight the same guy next week, you got like some of you look across at everyone that's played in my charity games. How many guys that have fought and they're all my pals, like they're all my mates. Like they would do anything for you. It doesn't have to be personal. It doesn't have to be to this next level off the chart where we're going to start bringing trouble within ourselves. And I think me and Vic were talking off air a couple, maybe last week. The minute the police and courts start getting into this, the game as we know it is fucking finished. Like,
yeah.
done. Game over. Game over. It is finished. So just remember, you are carrying anytime you do something stupid like that, you're carrying a risk of not only you, but every player in the entire country. You don't want to be the guy. You don't want to be the guy that fucking ruins it for everybody else. And we see any more incidents like this, you could be the guy that ruins it for everybody else.
Mm,
Everybody remembers the Chelmsford rule. And I mean, I'm not going to throw under the bus whose parent it was, But everyone remembers the Chelmsford rule and why under 16s all of a sudden couldn't play with men. Everybody knows who it was. Everybody knows who it was that complained. You don't want to be that guy. You don't. That put an entire generation behind the eight ball when it came to progressing and developing. Now, one small decision like that can have a catastrophic outcome, and the same thing happens here. You don't want to be the guy that does something stupid, and then the other thousands of players up and down the country are the ones to suffer. So next time you go out there, just maybe have a little think about that. Anything else for you, Vic?
Just to add that if you can't think about that, but think about the fact that if you had caused a catastrophic incident, that's something you never get over.
Yeah.
You know, it's not as if you just get to go and have a fresh start and get on. It stays with you for life, and that's something that impacts players. So,
Yeah.
use your time out to think about it, and hopefully it won't happen again. And it's good to see that the leagues are taking it seriously.
Yeah, agreed. And it was good to see, obviously, because I speak to people from within with both Scottish ice hockey and English ice hockey, them kind of combining forces and working together with Ice Hockey UK and the three
Mm.
federations. Although we're not one as of yet, that is the plan as far as it looks. They got together and they talked about these decisions, and I think that's great communication, and I think that's great for the sport. Ladies and gents, just a little bit of a rundown what 4,000 Encounter have on offer for you this week. We have Fife Flyers head coach Jamie Russell tomorrow. We also have the Solway Sharks general manager Jamie Thompson. We have Telford Tigers Scotty McKenzie. I believe if he gets 1 point tonight, he's about to hit 900 points for the Telford Tigers. We have Hull Seahawks coach and general manager Matty Davis. We have Chelmsford Chieftains head coach Lewis Clifford. And we are also working on one of the Great Britain ladies players. And then Mr. Band is going to come on and talk us through all things France 3. 7 interviews coming at you this week. We are back to taking over. Don't forget to subscribe, and we will see you for another episode very, very soon. Peace.